Hi everyone, my name is Phil Harris. I'm a controller at VATSIM Atlanta in the USA, and I'm going to show you how to get EuroScope set up to work on the new audio for VATSIM system. It's pretty straightforward. There are two things you need to download from the VATSIM website. There's a EuroScope plugin and there's an audio for VATSIM client. Let's install the client first. Already simple installer. Click next. If it wants to update itself, we'll say OK. Through the installer once more. And this is ready to go. So first of all, click Settings. Enter your VATSIM ID, password. Choose your microphone device, output device. Volume, leave it 0 to start with, see how you get on. The mic volume, now this is the most important part. You must set your mic volume slider such that your voice when you're speaking is mostly bouncing around in the green. If it's in the blue, you're going to be too quiet for the pilots. If it's in the red, it's going to be horrible and distorted. Spend some time getting this absolutely perfect. It's really, really important. There is a checkbox to disable the VHF and HF simulation and audio effects. Really, you should only use this if you just require an extremely clear signal for some reason. The recommendation is leave it off. Use a press to talk key and you can completely ignore this bottom section. This is for people who are flying with this client. It's the same client for pilots as it is for controllers. I didn't change anything, so there's no apply. Next, let's copy this new plugin somewhere inside the EuroScope folder. It really doesn't matter where it is. I created a folder, AFE plugin, and we'll drop it in there. Are we ready to load EuroScope? Okay, connect to the network as you ordinarily would. I'm going to connect first as Atlanta Center. Right now I've got the beta server, but when this goes live, you'll just choose from the normal server list. First thing you need to do is install that plugin. So go to plugins, load, find the right folder, choose the plugin, and that is that done. The plugin allows the audio for VATSIM client to communicate with EuroScope. Click connect on the client and you'll see it's picked up we're Atlanta Center and we need to prime our frequency. So this is just as you ordinarily would. Prime. You'll see receive and transmit text light up. However, the receive voice and transmit voice, you can just leave these unchecked. You'll see I've actually blanked out my server because this voice server field, this does nothing anymore. Neither does the channel. So you can just type garbage in here. EuroScope wants something. You can put NA, XX. It really makes no difference. Now notice the audio for VATSIM client has picked up we're Atlanta Center and we're 132.97. He got that through the plugin. It's also checked the transmit and receive buttons for us. If I press my push to talk, you'll see the transmit light lights up. That really is all that's involved in getting set up and controlling with the EuroScope on the network. But there's a few extra things that you might want to know about. There are some buttons at the top here which change the layout of this client just for your convenience. And there is also a couple of links which take you to a transceiver map and an online map. Now, let's talk about transceivers. Atlanta Center has been defined in the VATSIM database by the VATSIM Atlanta's facility engineer, and there are 26 transceivers associated with the bandboxed Atlanta Center position. So if we open up the transceiver map, you'll see all of these circles represent the coverage of each transmitter at the ground level. Perhaps a more useful map is this online map link. And here you can see Atlanta Airport and all of the transmitters. Now, this is important because aircraft on the ground in any of these gaps or outside of the rings will not be able to hear you, and you'll not be able to hear them transmit. Typically when they get to about 4,000 feet is when they're going to start to overlap. If we go down and have a look at Florida, you can see that this guy here, Southwest 933, his red ring is fairly small, which means he's low down. You can see 5,000 feet, but he is within range of Miami Center, so they'll be able to talk to one another. However, note, when the Miami Center controller transmits, he will transmit from all of these transceiver locations. However, when this pilot transmits, he will not be heard by this other pilot, and vice versa. Their rings are not overlapping. Now, there is a way around this. If you check this button here for cross coupling, now whenever this pilot transmits, your transceivers will retransmit his message across all of the other transceivers. So this pilot will also hear the same message. You can imagine the situation when you're bandboxing center, where you have one guy on the ground at one airport, another guy on the ground at another airport, miles away from each other. They are not going to know that they're effectively stepping on one another. So this could be fairly convenient. Let's close this for now. Let's also say that I wanted to control Atlanta Tower top down. I can add another frequency. Right now it doesn't know what the frequency is. Now Atlanta Tower's in there. This could be useful if I just want to receive. Perhaps I want to monitor the controller. But I can also transmit. Now when I transmit, I'm actually transmitting on 132.97 and 119.1. So if we go back to our online map, this probably hasn't refreshed yet, but there'll be another small ring appear for Atlanta Tower as well. And you see the transceiver count has gone up to 27. You can keep going like this. I can do ground as well. Transmit and receive. Now, you should note that at the moment, the pilots will only see in their controller clients the frequency that you have primed. And just like normal, that's one frequency. So they will not see that I'm listening to the tower and the ground frequencies. That will just require me telling them to call me back on ground. And it's worth noting that these are not voice rooms anymore. All of the frequencies on VATSIM are always voice all of the time, regardless of whether there's a controller controlling in them. So there's nothing stopping someone on the ground at Atlanta tuning 121.9 and giving it a call and seeing if I'm listening to it. I may be, I may not be. But at the time of making this video, there really is only one frequency that you can prime for the pilots to see. Now you can imagine the situation right now that I have where I transmit across all three of these frequencies, but the pilots will only hear other pilots who are on the same frequency as them. If you check the cross-couple buttons on all of them, then somebody who transmits on ground will be heard by the people on the tower frequency and on the center frequency. So this could be quite convenient if you want people not to step on one another. It could get quite confusing. The general recommendation is, at least at first, just start out with the one frequency and see how you get on. The local divisions and ATIS will have to decide on the procedures for allowing people top-down controlling multiple frequencies. You will see sometimes, for example, facility engineers are also able to define appropriate extra frequencies that might be useful. So if we put Heathrow Director, you don't just get the normal 119725, you also get the south approach, the final, the towers, the grounds, and so on, purely because the facility engineer has set that up and they thought it might be convenient. So let's talk about what happens when the transceivers are not defined. We'll disconnect this position. and we'll jump on Atlanta approach. Sometimes you have to wait just a second before you connect. Let's uncheck all of these other frequencies. And we'll choose the Atlanta approach. Okay. Give this just a second to update. Okay, now it's updated and you've got one transceiver and it says the source is the controller client. So this is my visibility center. Let me just set this one more time. So this means our facility engineer has not yet set up anything for the Atlanta approach position, and you just get the one transceiver, which will be centered on your visibility center. But that's not to say you can't add up to 5 more. So if I want to add another transceiver at Macon, I can do so, and there it is. So you can add 5 more of these. As time goes on, the facility engineers will define all of these frequencies. The last thing to talk about is ATIS in EuroScope. So the ATIS system still works. You'll find the voice ATIS is exactly where it was before. However, the start multiple record playback button is no longer to be used, because what this used to do was play different WAV files onto the old voice server to create the ATIS. Instead, you just, as you ordinarily would, connect the ATIS, and you can use the uni ATIS URLs if that's what you do. And that's it. The text ATIS that's put in here is picked up by the audio for VATSIM system, and it uses text-to-speech to create the ATIS for you. That is all you need to do. You do not need to click the start multiple record playback button, and you'll see it's primed the ATIS for us just as it ordinarily would. So that is it. You'll find lots more documentation on the VATSIM website. There's a huge manual for the clients and also for this audio for VATSIM client. If you have any questions, get in touch with your facility engineer, and I hope to hear you on the network soon. Thanks for listening.